Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our continuing meeting. This is the Yuma County Board of Supervisors in all special taxing districts. Special budget session. We started off yesterday. It went very smooth yesterday. Hopefully, we continue that today. And we will begin this special budget session with a call. This is a call to order with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll have Supervisor Pancras lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll have, first thing we'll have is the budget review team will go through their summary of the budget, and then I'll open it up again. We just went into a sort of a recess yesterday. We continue the meeting today. So I'm going to take the first two individuals that weren't here yesterday, which is the constable from District 2 and I think public fiduciary. She must be here, right? There, she's here. And then we'll start back again with the sheriff. So sheriff will just give us a second. All right, we'll start the meeting with the budget summary by the budget review team. Susan? Well, what, are we experiencing technical difficulties this early? There's nothing, huh? It goes to show all the preparation that goes into this thing. And remember, the old saying, you quit while you're ahead. If you're fine, you're fine. Don't go anywhere if you're fine. Nothing's happening? Oh, there you go. There it is. You look old enough to be a genie, but
What? Who was that for?
That was Kevin. He came up and he wanted to do his impression of the Avengers. Thanos.
Today we have our budget review team here. Julie Soprasto is also a member of our budget review team. We have Tony Struck, budget director, Bill Villegas, CFO, Cia Gomez, budget manager, Jessica Howard, and Jenny Untersay, our budget analyst. So for the next 2 days, yesterday and today, we'll hear from all departments, agencies, and outside parties that are funded by Yuma County. And after the presentation, the staff would like the board's direction on any changes from the recommended budget to the tentative budget, which will come to you on June 3rd. So today's agenda will include a recap of the recommended budget, which I'll cover, and then we'll have presentations from the departments and agencies regarding their portion of the budget, a review of long-range forecast for the library district fund balance by Tony Struck. As we've discussed over the last few years, the library district has a fund balance that continues to decline and will soon need to be stabilized. Through the long-range forecasting tool, the board will be able to view the effect of various scenarios on the fund balance as it relates to the adopted policy. We'll ask for the board's discussion, and CFO Gil Villegas will have the interactive spreadsheet available to identify the impact of any options you may want to consider as changes from the recommended to the tentative budget. So the county identified a number of goals going into this budget process. We take a baseline approach, meaning that we look at every expenditure from the ground up to determine the necessity of that expenditure and the appropriate funding level. Our top priorities this year were to fund a wage adjustment for all employees, minimize health insurance increases, and continue to address critical personnel, equipment, and capital needs that have been building over time. We also work to ensure the stability of all funds. Due to the efforts of staff and the Yuma County Employee Benefit Trust Board, health insurance premium rates will increase very slightly. Also, there is a continuation of the 1.5% contribution shift for the employee's share of dependent premiums. I'm very pleased to announce that a compensation adjustment is included in the recommended budget. The City of Yuma announced large increases in public safety salaries for police officer ranks as of July 1 of 2019. In order to remain competitive, we're recommending a 6.8% increase for deputies and a 3% increase for senior deputies, as well as another 1% on their anniversary date, if they've been an employee for at least 12 months and are not on a performance improvement plan. An increase is also included for all other pay plans, with the exception of housing due to HUD funding, of 2% on July 1st and another 1% increase on their anniversary date with the same criteria. In addition, adjustments to align positions with steps in pay plans and to meet minimum wage requirements are also included. The budget team continues to make improvements, in particular in the general fund, to enhance the transparency of our budget process. Among our challenges this year are that we continue to bear the burden of state shifts and funding responsibilities. The good news is that the current legislature appears to be in favor of reducing and or removing some of these shifts, specifically in the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections and Election Officer Retirement Plan, but that remains to be seen because the budget is not complete yet. There are other funds that remain uncertain in the long term, such as the federal payment in lieu of taxes, which represents a good portion for the general fund. Various fee-based special revenue funds are subject to fluctuations in revenue, which means we need to carefully review all expenses charged to those funds. Due to the favorable fund balance created by department underspending and better than anticipated revenues, we're able to cash fund over $1.5 million in capital improvements. This is the second year of a 3-year program to set aside funds for our fleet replacement fund, which will begin in fiscal year 2021. The board adopted a policy to ensure prudent fund balances for the county's major funds, and this budget reflects that policy. So for the all funds, this chart summarizes the budgets for all funds, which the county is responsible, and the appropriation as recommended compared to the current budget. So you can see that overall, all funds are budgeted to increase slightly less than 3.5%. During the budget process, the budget review team carefully scrutinized any requests for new positions. The recommended budget includes a net increase of 6 positions in comparison to the current year's amended budget. So the net is comprised of the 7 positions in the general fund and a net reduction of 1 position in special revenue funds. There are also 2 additional FTEs added in the special revenue funds, but 1 was eliminated. I'm sorry, 3 were eliminated. Pardon me. So yesterday and today, the board will hear presentations from all departments, agencies, and outside parties. Then we'll review the long-range forecast for the library district, and then we'll have you make any discussion and use the interactive spreadsheet to identify options that the board may want to consider. That concludes my presentation.
Any questions from the board? We've got the same presentation as yesterday, so we're just gonna move right on. Lucia, let's call our first presenter.
We have Constable 2, Rafael Torres is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 61.
Okay, Rafael, you're going to set the tone, so be careful.
Thank you very much, everybody. First of all, I apologize for discussion yesterday, and I would like to thank Lucia and the staff from finance and for the help and guidance through the budget. I'm not asking for anything. I like my budget the way it is. So if you have any questions for me, I'm available for that.
Any questions? Oh, well, you're happy, we're happy. Thank you very much. And that's,
thank you.
see, that's how it's done.
Next
Next is the public fiduciary.
Candy.
Oh, sorry, Lucia, I keep forgetting your request in the show.
Candy Wheeler is available for any questions for public fiduciary. Department pages begin on page 87.
Good morning, Chairman Reyes, members of the board.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you for allowing me to change over to today. I did not ask for anything in my budget this year, so it's the same as it was last year. So
You got nothing, huh?
I don't have any comments unless you guys have questions for me.
Any questions from the fiduciary? No?
We have a columbarium
Yeah.
in the budget.
We do. You're right. We do. In capital improvements, we are working towards getting the columbarium done, which I'm grateful for. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we'll begin with the full agenda for this morning. And the first,
Next, we have the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Wilma is available for any questions. Department pages begin page 161 for admin and patrol, page 165 for jail district.
you know, I taped the 60-minute segment this weekend, so I already seen you yet last night, so, yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
members
Buffett,
of
you
the
know,
board.
we could have some assistance from Mr. Buffett.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Sheriff Leo Wilmot, Yuma County. First, I wanted to give this back to Supervisor Simmons. My employee's gonna be
That
okay.
is conflict of interest right there.
Just
Should have thrown it
returning,
to this
just
guy.
returning his item. My employee's gonna be all right. They checked him
Wasn't
out.
mine.
He'll be okay. So,
I don't want to point
I'll
out
have to fill
where
you
the
in on
man is
the
from.
Is
rest
that
of
a puppy dog by any chance?
You could have brought some, you know, yellow or,
Qualify as a
puppy.
Oh.
Orange uniforms. You should have brought some orange uniforms to wear.
Is it a big boy? Huh.
All right, go ahead, Sheriff.
I'm sorry, yeah. I'll let Supervisor Simmons educate you on that on a break.
Oh, my God.
But I want to thank the board and the county administrator for their continued support in addressing public safety for Yuma County as a priority. Prior to our market salary that was done years ago, back in 2015, we were at a 15% attrition rate for our patrol bureau. Through addressing those issues, we've now brought that down to 5%, which is astronomical for us and long overdue. So with the national average being about 12%, there's something to be said about that. So I wanted to commend your county administrator and the staff for everything that they have been doing. Our jail operations continue to improve for retention of qualified detention officers. Prior to the market salary adjustment in 2015, we lost 49 employees. With the attrition, now you're looking at, we only lost 28. So we've gone from 20% to about 10% attrition rate for the jail. It takes a special person to be able to work in that environment, and through their assistance on addressing that, we've been able to keep a lot of our good personnel there with that. And the national average is right now 16%, so we're getting close. I'd like to highlight just a few of the accomplishments that were done this last year to highlight the level of cooperation and collaboration that we've had with the county administrator and the staff. One is the proactive on the county administrator's part in regards to the salary. From the very beginning, the county administrator actually approached us before we even approached her, and she was already monitoring what was going on with the city of Yuma and what they were dealing with on addressing the pay for the PD officers. So thank you for being on top of that, as well as when our HR got a hold of Felicia was already working on the numbers, so it made that a lot easier for us in the long run to be able to address that. For vehicles and associated equipment, we've been able to receive updated equipment to replace some of the aging infrastructure that we had, which means our officers will be more safer out on the street with the newer equipment. They won't be dealing with the issues we had with the aging equipment on that. Computer policy, county ITS, I have to thank Cliff Summers for being engaged with our ITS staff. One of the bigger things that we've tried to address through the years is our MDCs and being able to, and through his efforts working with our ITS, we've been able to put them on a rotational schedule with the county for that. On boats this year, Gil from County Finance and Tony from Budget came up with a method to use some of our savings and open positions to replace one of our boats that we were working with the board on. And it's my understanding that we'll also be looking at addressing the other boat that's over 10 years old right now too. So want to thank them for jumping in and helping with that. Our boat patrol budget, obviously through LEBSF, we do not always get those total amount of funds to be able to fund full-time boating officers for the whole year. Through the work that we've been able to do with finance, we were actually able to utilize some funding to actually keep those officers working the boat patrol and not have to leave 3 open positions, so we had to move them back and forth every year. So I want to thank them for working with us on that as well. The jail district, while the district is run well, and it's a very efficient operation, we struggle yearly with unanticipated cost. And that's something we get hit with a lot in regards to large breakdowns like chillers, the equipment in the kitchen. But one of the biggest impacts that we get hit with is our medical costs. This last year was $500,000. That's unanticipated funding that we have to fight every year to try to make sure that we stay within our budget on. Thanks to Gil's input, working with Matt, they've both come up with a solution so that we will be able to meet the 5% contingency mandate for the county, and we're working on that daily. I will tell you that Gil and Matt talk a lot, but from what we've come up with, we'll be able to meet that 5% contingency and be able to maintain that. So the timing of support can be better right now because law enforcement as a whole right now we're dealing with a bunch of different things. One is mental health, As you know, recently, the other day, they had the Southwest Arizona Town Hall, and that had to deal with mental health issues. Captain Lackey from the jail was there because he's one of our resident experts dealing with mental health in the jail environment, and they were able to share some of those concerns that we have in law enforcement. And that's throughout the whole state on dealing with mental health issues. We're also still dealing with a number of domestic violence cases and unfortunately sexual assaults going through Amberleys. So that's something that we're seeing a slow increase in as far as law enforcement is concerned, and it's something that we're trying to tackle proactively. A lot of the cases in regards to domestic violence are seen as from getting the education out there that there is resources for these individuals that are victims of domestic violence. So now they're coming forth and reporting that more often to law enforcement than what they used to do in the past. But bottom line is, I'd like to thank the county administrator for your consistent support for us and our operations, as well as your staff and their professionalism. I would like to remind the board that we just had Telecommunicators Week. Corrections Week was last week, and now we're into Law Enforcement Memorial Week. And tomorrow night will be the Law Enforcement Memorial down at the crossing, so we will be down there about 7 p.m. So if you get a chance, stop by there. Appreciate it. And we're also participating in a number of different functions coming up, one of which is Bikes for Books, which the local Masonic Lodge has been doing for years, where kids read a certain amount of books, then they get entered in to win a bike. So we'll be doing that in Dayton on Friday. We partnered with them where we get the helmets through the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. So we give the kids the helmets, put on a little bike rodeo after they win their bike. So it's kind of something neat, gets us involved with the youth in Yuma County. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any.
Any questions?
But thank you.
Just a comment.
Comment.
Sheriff, I appreciate your praise of the staff, but it needs to go the other way too. You and your staff work very, very well with the county administrator, finance. You got a very, very difficult job in keeping the finances going there with the limited resources. And I just can't praise you enough for the great job you and your team have done. We appreciate it a lot.
Do it without them, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And on that positive note, thank you very much, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Coming up.
Enjoy your day.
Yeah.
Next, we have Clerk of Superior Court. Lynn Foss, Clerk of the Superior Court, is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 55.
Good morning, Chairman Reyes
Morning.
and members of the board.
Good morning.
We asked for really just a few things this year, and we're satisfied with the work of the budget review team. They've always been excellent to work with, and as again, we're satisfied with their recommendation. So really, unless you have any questions, I'm short and sweet today,
All right. She's quitting while she's ahead.
Yeah.
pretty much.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Superior Court. Presiding Judge David Hawes is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 169.
Your Honor.
As members of the board, we are also happy with the budget review team. We like working with them. We think we have a good relationship. We're pleased with the proposed budget. We have had some changes in the court. Judge Plant retired after many years, but we had the replacement already, Judge Farrar, and so we're happy with the board's pay raise, proposed raise for the employees. We think we have great employees, and we're glad for that. But I don't have anything else. If you have questions.
Have any questions from the judge? No? Judge, thank you. Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you.
I mean, it's important to see you.
Next, we have Adult Probation. Chief Adult Probation Officer Sandy Hopple is available for questions. Department pages begin on page 35.
Morning.
Morning.
Chairman Reyes, members of the board. I will reiterate what everyone else is saying before me, that the work with the budget review team has been very helpful in our struggles and needs for clarification on different levels and so forth. So it's been very helpful working with them as always. I will also say that the Adult Probation Department is accepting of the recommendations that are brought forward by the budget review team. And if you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? No questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. This one's going to get interesting. The next one? Lucia?
Sorry, next we have the Justice Courts. Martin Mendez is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 117.
Ooh, that was a save, Martin. We were just about to get into.
Good morning, Chairman Reyes and members of the board. Martin Mendez, Justice Court Administrator, here to answer any questions. We too would like to thank Mrs. Thorpe and County Administration and OMB for their consideration with our request. But we too are also happy with their recommendation. If you have any questions, I'll answer.
The only question I have
Where
is, are we in a
is
dream?
this?
This is real?
Oh, thank you, Martin. Are there any questions for the budget?
No.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Juvenile court.
Next we have Juvenile Court. Tim Hardy, Director of Juvenile Court, is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 123.
123.
Morning.
Morning.
Tim Hardy, Juvenile Court Director. We're really happy with working with the budget review team and happily accept their recommendations.
Oh, I know there's something wrong.
No.
I will just have
Fellow
to say,
Chromehead, you got to break the cycle here.
I will just
I'm
have
just
to
kidding.
say that, in the 22 years I've been doing this, it keeps getting smoother and smoother. Very much appreciated.
Like our haircut.
And I did cut my hair for today's meeting.
That's right. I can tell.
I'm satisfied. I'd like to entertain any questions that the board may have.
No, thank you. No questions. Ooh,
Next.
that was tough to hold back.
Next we have the Treasurer's Office. Vanessa Valenzuela, Deputy County Treasurer, is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 179.
It's a familiar face.
Here on behalf of Treasurer Angela Moreno. She is actually held back with the customer at this time, but she did mean to be here.
She sends the backup team.
I'm sorry?
She sent the backup team.
Yep. I'm here to answer any questions. We are happy with our budget.
All right.
Wow.
Okay. Well, any questions from the happy people from
can't
the
let
Treasury
off that.
Department? All right. Just because we didn't know you were coming. Otherwise, we would have had some questions.
I didn't know I was coming though.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Treasurer.
Here comes the speed bump, though.
Oh.
Next we have Assessor's Office. Joe Worley, County Assessor, is available for any questions. Department pages begin on page 41.
Here's the bump in the road.
Uh-oh. I don't know. Just kidding.
I want to see this one.
Chairman, members of the board, Joe Worley, Yuma County Assessor. Okay,
Mess it
Mr.
up.
McLeod, now you'll know that you're dreaming.
Ah.
Because I am very happy with my proposed budget.
Oh, my gosh.
This is a nightmare.
I want to thank the budget team, especially this year. We had a really, really great session this year, so I'm very pleased with the recommendations.
Yeah, we just gave you like the 50th year of service award, so,
40, okay.
I think you may be one of the lowest the highest serving, longest serving, members of the team here. So you do have some institutional memory.
I do enjoy it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Worley. I don't think we have
Thank
anything.
you. Appreciate it. You are in a dream, Tony.
Yeah, we are.
Next we have Capital Improvement Projects. Frank Sanchez, Interim County Engineer, is available for any questions.
Ooh.
Good morning.
Morning.
Frank Sanchez, Deputy County Engineer, Development Services, and I'm happy with the CIP.
We're not. It's too slow.
I'm
I've been
even
waiting for-
happier that we're hiring some engineers to be able to deliver the CIP.
Yeah, well,
We have one on board that we just hired, and next week we have another gentleman that's joining us next week. So we're happy about that.
All right.
At this particular time, the question is whether you're happy with your budget, because essentially, we'll get into individual details with the CIP as we see them. Are you going to go through some sort of a summary?
Yeah, basically, there's 7 sections to the CIP, and so I was going to briefly just show. I'm not going to go through all of them unless you have any specific questions.
Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, Section 1 is pretty much the HERF projects. Just one quick note that I'd like to point out for project 1.1502 that you have on your booklet, it was incorrectly labeled. We have it highlighted up here. That project is actually County 12th Street from Avenue 11E to 12E reconstruction. But if you have any questions regarding any of these projects, I can move on to the next one.
8th Street, we're just about there?
8th Street, they're ready to go. They're contractors out there currently setting survey points, and they're mobilizing next week.
Got it.
Avenue B between County 16 and County 18. That's going to be.
Phase 2 has been completed, the irrigation relocation. Phase 3, we're looking to bid that first or second week in July.
Have all the right-of-ways been acquired?
I'm sorry?
Have all the right-of-ways been secured?
We have one parcel that we have to go to condemnation, and we forward that paperwork over to our county attorney.
Did that hold up the project?
That shouldn't hold up the project.
You're getting close, huh?
Yeah, I am. I hope I can see it before I die. Just kidding.
Okay,
All right.
Going on to section 2.
Flood control.
Section 2. Public facilities.
Public facilities. If you have any questions?
No.
No.
Flood control.
Section 3 is
Oh, we
flood
always have a
control.
lot of. I have a lot of questions with flood control. Like, when are they going to get one project done?
That's just one
Just
question,
one question.
one project.
Yeah.
So when does that happen?
Can I read your mind?
I'm sure you can.
I'm sure you know which one.
Actual plans for construction, we're bringing them to the board for approval on May 20th next
So
week.
the city's done with the review?
The city's has approved, ADWR has approved the plans, and so now it's the Board of Supervisors holding it up.
Low blow. You're lucky Ferguson isn't here.
I think he'd be happy.
No, we're lucky.
Yeah, we're lucky he's not here. Sorry, not you. We're lucky.
So that is coming on May 20th.
No, you don't have to.
The Smucker Park,
Smucker
Smucker Park retention basin that's going to be constructed along Avenue 8 near 24th Street, just south of the hospital. So, so I've been on the books for several years, and
Like 20?
like 20 years. And we're glad that we're bringing those plans for approval to go out to bid.
All right.
Great.
Great.
Housing has one project this year.
Okay.
Jail District. Jail District has one continuing project that they're looking to finalize that this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year.
Yeah, this one has a lot of work for Superior Court. We have some work for Superior Court in there, no? Yeah.
The ITS.
Oh, there it goes.
And section 7 is the community development. They have one existing project with 3 proposed ones. Now we didn't include the unfunded projects on the CIP, but I did list it up here. Just for your information, just trying to get some guidance. Is this something that you guys want as part of the CIP to include?
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's just, yeah, we need to keep them in mind. So to be reminded,
it does come in handy. We've gotten requests from legislation about
unmet needs,
tax increases from the fuel tax. What kind of projects we have pending? So
Oh,
this actually came in very handy on response to some of those questions on what type of projects could we use the additional funding for. And so we refer back to this. So.
Yeah.
we'll go ahead and add that to the CIP.
Please do. Any questions? Any comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're now, Lucia, where are we now? No, I just wanted to make sure. All right. First of all, I like to say something that the fact that we get through this process this quickly and this orderly, and it better than, it's the best word I can find. It's not because they're simple items or simple issues that we get to discuss. It's because there's a lot of work that's done over months between the budget review team and all the representatives of the agencies that are here. So I think credit should be given to the fact that, the budget review team must learn to do this in a very professional, very efficient manner so that it shows up in a meeting like this. I mean, we've had budget meetings now for basically, maybe 5 or 6 hours in total for 20 some departments. And that is something that at least I personally like to, acknowledge the fact that it isn't because of all the work we actually do. It's all the work that you all do in getting together and discussing these items to the point that, most of the time what we get to see is a lot of agreement. That's not how the process begins normally. And there is a lot of unmet needs that, may still be out there that, we need to deal with. But at this particular time, I'm really thankful that what we get to do is go through a process like this. So thank you all very much for the sense of cooperation you both have with the budget review team and understanding that this is not a perfect world. We cannot do everything that's in front of us, but we try to do the best we can. And I like to thank you before you leave for that. Okay, so.
If I may.
Sure.
My time on the board, I have not seen it this smooth. I mean, it just, kudos, I echo.
It's
Chairman
because of the
Reyes.
new board members, they would say.
That's
what
what
they
they
say.
say.
That's what I was thinking.
The
How
new
funny.
board members that got elected, created this new.
But congratulations, Tony, and the rest of your team. I know you've all worked very, very hard, and it seems like a dream.
Just don't make it a nightmare before we end it, okay? Well, thank you very much. You can, you can stay if you want to. We're going to go through maybe a couple of items that are still left undecided on that we're going to put up probably. But this was weird because normally we have like 5 or 6 or 7 items to talk about at the end of this process. And I think there's maybe 2 now to talk about. So thank you again very much. And we'll move on to the discussions about what remains to be talked about. And who's doing this? Hill or Susan?
Well,
You only have one, actually.
Do you want to talk about general fund first?
The PTO buyback is one of the things that we need to talk about, and the possibility of what are we going to do with the library district reserve account. Those are the 2 issues that I think come to mind. Huh?
Then we have that.
Oh,
there's several things, really.
Oh, the adjustments? The salary adjustment?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Gil Villegas, CFO. Let's start exactly where we left out when we were doing the recommended budget. These are the comments that I heard from the board, things that we needed to adjust to our spreadsheet. So one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody notices is that during the conversation, during the recommended budget, the presentation of the recommended budget, I heard to keep the same tax rates last year. That would increase our budget 2020 amount to $30,642,000. During the recommended budget, we also heard about additional comments or additional concerns or items that the board wanted to see. We went ahead and we have calculated what would be a half a step for all those employees that are making less than $50,000 a year. Also, we calculated what would cost for the general fund only to set aside an additional half step for employees that exceed on their work performance. We also have an item here for PTO buyback, and I have not disclosed the number. We'll get back to it as soon as I'm done with this initial presentation.
Hey, Gil, what was that number on the half step?
On the half step for exceeds 66,000.
No, 170, that's what I was looking for.
170?
Oh, no, that's the half step, the 50,000 or less
Right.
adjustment.
Right.
So just to clarify on the, what a half step is 1%. And for the additional half step for exceeds, that the guidance was going to be 10% of your staff or one person, whichever is higher. And that would have to meet criteria that HR would develop in order to identify what exceeds, not just anybody who got exceeds. Also, the courts does not have a performance
Step system.
evaluation system that says exceeds. They either meet or don't meet. So this does not include the court system.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, are we done with, we need to make a decision on the PTO buyback so that we have a number to, adjust. We need to make a decision whether we're going to.
Chairman,
have
let
the
me just
program or
finish,
not.
go through all the
Right.
items, and then
And then I'll go back to
I'll turn
revenue.
it loose to you guys.
And then we'll look for the revenues or take them out.
Yeah.
During our recommended budget, we also brought to your attention the increase on access, the long-term care, the administration, and additional items that we have discovered that needed to be added for, right after the recommended budget.
The 695 is an add-on, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So we haven't done adjustments on the revenue side. We haven't looked at the revenue side.
By doing the adjustment of keeping the same tax rate
Tax rate.
and making an adjustment to the BOS contingency, we were able to balance the budget, and we were able to stay within our means per se. Our balance is budget. We have a deficiency or a structural imbalance of $3.1 million. But with the keeping the same tax rate, it will cover for whatever the items that we have listed for you from recommended until now. Now, after conversations that we had, I was brought to attention that we needed to add an additional $22,000
For a server maintenance fee?
for server maintenance contract. That is for the Superior Court. And also the PTO buyback that we did a quick calculation yesterday. It will cost us around $216,000 for the general fund.
If we decide to do it.
If we decide to do that.
What happens if we don't?
It just
Then we don't.
doesn't.
We
We
don't.
didn't do it this year.
Zero balance. So because of those two items that we have brought to your attention, now the fund, the general fund is in a deficit of $285,600. So either we find more resources to do that, or we decide on the
out the
programs that you have,
Yeah, we took
that we have mentioned in here. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I guess the items pending was the $50,000 additional half step, the exceeds, PTO buyback, and I think those are the three items.
Well, we're not doing the PTO buyback. Unless we find funds somewhere.
Unless we find money somewhere, yeah. It's too much. But if you're ready to debate, I'm. ready to
Oh,
go.
yeah, are we done? Those are all the items we talked
Those
about.
are the items.
So we're short 300 and,
This is the number that we need to look at.
285,600. Okay, now, on the reserve fund for vehicles, for the fleet, is that $1 million?
It's another 500,000.
We added $500,000 to that?
Yeah.
Why?
This is year 2 of the 3-year program to build up that fund.
So we only have 500,000.
No, you're setting
There's-
aside
there's
1
budgeting
million.
another 500.
That's what I'm saying. We have
For a total of
500,000
$1
and.
million.
Right, and then next year it'll be another 500,000 to start the program.
So what we're doing is reserving that money. That's why it shows us $1 million, because there is $1 million if we add the $500,000 this year to it.
Right.
Now, that's important. How important?
Yeah. That's why we decided to do it. But, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You're ready?
Okay, well, let's begin. Let's begin looking at whether we start taking those items off, or we start looking for funds within that budget to cover them, right? Because the money's got to come from somewhere. And let me begin by saying that I'm still holding on to this, not changing the tax property rates.
Right.
So, that I want to put that on the table. So let's begin the debate. What are your ideas?
Well, I cannot support the half step for 50,000 or less. The primary reason is it's arbitrary. That $50,000 number was just grabbed out of thin air. It doesn't have any real meaning. I understand the premise, but nobody who's making $100,000 today started out at 100,000. They started out at 24,000, 28,000, and they worked their way up. Well, if you take somebody who made $50,285 last year, they're not going to get anything. Somebody who sits right next to them that made $49,650 is going to get an additional 1%. That's not fair. And $50,000, like I said, it's arbitrary. Why isn't it 53? Why isn't it 48? I will not vote for a budget that has that in there because it's arbitrary.
And Mr. Chair?
Oh, everything is arbitrary. We set an amount for.
50,000, where did it come
Mr.
from?
Chair?
Yeah, sure,
2%.
it's okay.
Okay, 2% of 150,000 as compared to 2% of 24,000 is a huge difference.
Sure it is. So is the salary. It's a big difference between those salaries.
I know.
So why 50? Why not 48?
Why
42?
10% of the performance only?
And don't forget, we're actually giving a greater
No, I'm
than
saying we pick and choose numbers. I mean, we just
Yeah.
pick 10% as the top.
We're giving greater than a 3% raise, by the way.
Well, no,
You
I mean,
that?
we're not, exactly. We're not discussing the overall increases. We're discussing one single line item, and the question is, how do we come up to $50,000? Okay, and that's how we come up with numbers like this all the time. That's okay. Hey, if you guys want to have a discussion.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we need to have a discussion that, we can all participate on. So, okay, your point is that the $50,000 is arbitrary, therefore you don't support it. Okay, so who's making any counterpoints to that?
I just, if you wanna, if someone here in the county started at $24,000, for that employee to reach 50,000
with the 2%,
with the 2% raise.
No,
that's
they don't do
taken.
that with a
No,
2%
well,
raise.
that
They
was
do it
your
by
comment.
bettering themselves and
But
getting
that was
better
you
position.
made that comment.
It's okay, you made your point, okay?
You made that comment. For someone
Somebody
to
else makes the point.
make 24,000 to reach 50,000 or 60,000, it's gonna take them a long time.
It won't.
That's not how you
For
do
two
it. You do it
well-
by advancing yourself within the organization.
I know you do that, but my point with the $50,000 or less is that what is it, 661,000? That
The
2%?
adjustment, the full step?
Yeah, the full step. How many employees make half of that money? Because at 170, 50,000 or less of the employees or that make $50,000 less, it's 170. So it's $340,000 out of that 661. And I guarantee you it's not half and half. It's less employees that make more, 50,000, and get the majority of the money. And I'm just, the last 5 years, they've been getting 2% raise.
Look,
So I just want to make sure that we're looking at it, the employees that are making $50,000 or less.
All right, I think the argument was, if I remember at the beginning, because we had a situation where you actually made the statement, because you're the one that suggested this, but you actually made the statement that when you made that statement, you weren't thinking about additional money. You were thinking about money adjustments to be made on the full step, on the original amount. I remember making the statement that a 2% increase for someone making $80,000 was much different than a 2% increase for someone that's making $24,000. And that at some particular point in time, we needed to lift the bottom up a little bit. Because again, every time we give a 2% increase to someone that makes $25,000, it really doesn't mean much in take-home salary. So we were trying to figure out a way to do that. And the $50,000 was an amount that I suppose you picked because you had your reason. You had your reason to pick it. But it's arbitrary for us to say 10% of we choose. Every time we do this type of thing, we choose. We choose half step, we choose 2%. It's an arbitrary number. 2% is an arbitrary number. We picked it. Why? Because we think that's fair. So, that argument, while, it makes some sense in terms of choosing a number, it doesn't make really that much sense when you realize that we're picking numbers out in thin air. We don't have any reason. There is there is, I remember people telling me, well, it should be at least a cost of living increase, for example. That's not arbitrary. That cost of living is determined by some sort of federal formula that applies. But in this particular cases, when we're making the decision of a budget and how much money we're going to set aside for salary increases, most of the decisions are arbitrary. We decide 10%, again, only 10% of the employees or one maximum is going to get that meet or exceeds. The court system doesn't have a system to meet or exceed, so we're arbitrarily taking you guys out of the system here. But the less than $50,000 applies everywhere. So we're making arbitrary decisions all the time. Sure.
If the point is that people who have worked for the county for a long time and are still very below $50,000, what if we put a number of years worked, so that if you've had all those folks that have been here for 5 years or more that are making under 50,000?
Lynn, I think that I think that what the problem here is the actual picking of a number. If it was the medium income for the area, if it was something that is tied to some sort of a measurement, I think it would be a lot easier to understand, because it doesn't become a situation where someone making $50,100 just do not get that increase. So if we're going to do something like this, we should pick a number that is tied to something, at least to take the controversy out of the actual amount. So what is the medium?
You know what, I meant to look that up earlier, thank you.
What is the medium income for the area? Does anybody know? I'm not trying to pick a number out of thin air. I'm just trying to figure out there is a dividing number.
43,253.
See, if you'd have picked anyone making below 43,253, gets, that additional increase, I think it makes a lot more sense than simply picking a number out of thin air. I do agree with that. So would you guys consider, making that increase available to anyone making below 43,253? To get away from,
If the budget was balanced, yes, but we've got to come up with, what, $230,000?
You see, my problem is when I look at, let me finish my statement, because, for example, if you ask me what's more important, to make the living condition or to raise the living condition or raise salaries, or to have more money on the fleet management budget line item, I would tell you I would choose people anytime. So when you're asking me whether this is a fair budget, it is. But you choose what's important to you, I guess. And in this particular case, I'd say that I would gladly take $250,000 out of the fleet management $1 million set aside and put it on this particular item if I was given that choice. Now, I don't want to make an arbitrary choice, and I understand that we make decisions that are based upon facts, and that's why I think there was some resistance to just picking a number out of thin air. So we need to resolve that issue first. I'd say that we resolve it by setting down the, what is it called?
43
Medium household income in Yuma County. If anybody making below that works for the county may get an adjustment of what? What was it? Half step? Half step. That's not really that, that unwavering. That's not really, going to cost us that much more. It will reduce that 170 to something below that. But it's whether we want to do it or not. I think that's important. And if the philosophical resistance is to pick a number out of thin air, then we can solve it by picking an actual number that applies. Is that okay with you?
That's better.
It's better.
That's better.
That's better.
I might see my way there.
Okay. All right. So we picked a number. That's the first step. The second step is where the money coming from.
The PTO buyback, do we have agreement that we might want to take that out, and that changes that number a lot too?
Yeah. Take the PTO buyback. I think we're more interested in making sure that we do the other thing.
If you take the PTO and the half step, that pretty much gets us balanced.
Well, let's see what it does.
You know what? You might be balanced because
we reduce that 170.
$7,000.
Yeah, we may be able to get there without doing much more and still meet some guidelines here.
Reducing the PTO buyback.
Yeah, why don't we just set? Why don't you reduce 26,000 from the 170 and use that much money to do the half step? Well, look, it's a number, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to come up with the final figure right now because even the 170 was an estimate. It's not. There's no real way to know until you actually get into the numbers. So if we we're setting aside numbers based on some presumptions.
We'll have another meeting.
It is.
Oh, we have another meeting before we
We have
approve
another
it.
meeting, so can you
When is-
calculate
can
that, and
calculate
bring it
that?
back, and we can decide that?
I was gonna suggest that, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, members of the board, give us an opportunity
Don't
so
call
we
me
can
mayor,
calculate
though.
the numbers.
All right, so we're $26,000 short. We'll get a final number before we approve the tentative budget. Can we leave it at that right now? Does anybody else have a problem with that?
If that's the pleasure of the board, yes.
No, don't make any more arguments. Eh?
No, I just want to say something about the PTO that, I mean, I'm fine with taking it off, but I do think that the county needs to do something because
To force
next
people to take
year,
it.
it's 2% raise this year. Next year, that adds to that buyback, to those hours. And every year is it's gonna be adding. I mean, we gotta come up with a solution that say.
We already have it. There's a cap.
No, yeah, but not the cap, but that 400 hours is still gonna be going up with
is it
the
not?
amount. Yeah, because if you.
Oh, you mean
the
more
amount-
employees are
yeah,
gonna get
no,
into
not
that.
more employees, but just, if you
Well-
give a raise, every time you give a raise, that hour goes up.
You mean the cost of it
The
goes
cost of
up?
it, yeah, when you
Don't we
pay
have
it
like a
back.
settlement amount,
No,
half of
yeah,
it?
the 400 hours.
Yeah, no,
not a
but it's
cap on
400
the
hours.
salary.
For clarification purposes, Felicia explained it yesterday, it's 240, the
cap.
total hours,
That's
that's
the
the
cap.
cap. But there are
What
some,
you're saying, I understand.
some employees are grandfathered in, and the total would be up to 400 hours.
Yeah, well, which is the majority.
I'm sorry,
when we just
280.
280. excuse me. The
200.
280 is the top. But when
No,
somebody
400.
leaves, are they paid the full amount or are they paid half?
We'll pay the full amount at the,
Well,
rate.
you know
at
what,
the
I have a
rate.
problem with people, just adding and adding and adding and adding to it. I mean, PTO is there for a reason. It's for people to take vacation, take time off. It's not for them to accumulate it. I just have a problem with that. I mean, really, I do. I can't fix it. But, and I understand what the argument is. The argument is those hours will increase in value for that employee as long as he works for the county. The longer he works for the county and the more money he makes per hour, that amount increases gradually. If he's making $20 an hour now, but when he leaves, he's making $40 an hour, that's going to be $40 an hour times 280 maximum. That's what, I
Yeah,
suppose
no,
that's
it's
what
true.
you're
When
mentioning.
he started at 24,000 and now he's making 80.
Well, let's not raise him to 50,
Yes,
huh?
I know.
To 43,000. No, I'm just kidding, just kidding, just
There's one
kidding.
more thing too, for clarification for the board. You guys keep tossing out this 2% raise. It is not.
It's not.
It is in excess of 3%.
That's right.
Because you're gonna
Get
get
the
another
1%
1%
on
on
the
top
annual.
of the 2%.
No. I think I get it.
It's a substantial amount.
It is.
Yes,
It is
but-
one of those few years where we're actually talking about more than two. We're actually talking between 3 and 4 in some particular cases, and maybe
Mr. Chair,
5.
with what the economists are projecting for the next 2, 3, 4 years, this may be as good as we can get for a long time. So,
Well,
You know.
the only thing I have to say, Lynn, about that Supervisor Pancracy is that, and I suppose Supervisor McLeod, will understand when I say we have been trained over time to separate or make the difference, acknowledge the difference between recurring payments, which is, something that once you raise
once you
it,
do it, you
that's
do
right,
it
and
forever.
one-time
Right.
expenses.
Yes. I know.
One-time expenses, we can manage. Recurring expenses means that if the revenues go down, the expenses will continue the same as what the base budget situation happens to be. So we're always leery. The biggest cost to county government, it's got to be the 1,300, 1,400 employees that we have and making sure they get their pay. And so whenever it comes right down to it, that's really the driving force because we don't sell gadgets, we sell service. And if those employees aren't happy about, their living condition and their wages, it's very difficult for me to see how they're going to do better out there. So we're taking care of them. And I hope they realize that, as Supervisor McLeod said a minute, this is not a 2% increase. This is a 3 or 4% increase. And if you do well, this is probably the first time we do have a truly pay for performance section in it that applies. So I can understand. So I can understand that is something that Supervisor McLeod has been wanting for a long time. He wants to make it more, tailor it more like the private sector, which is, I think, a good idea. And in this particular case, the fact that we're looking at people that make below $43,350 as being able to raise them up, I think we're doing work at both ends. I think we're trying to make the lives of our employees, to make their salaries better so they can improve their lives. And I think that that's probably the most important thing that as a board, we need to take a look at individually, because, you know, you're what makes the county go. And if you're happy with your budget, that's good, but are your employees happy with what they make? And that, I think, is where we're at.
And are we
Right.
competitive?
And are we competitive? And I think that's the other problem. The other problem is at some particular point in time, employees start wanting to have a market study because they figure that a market study is going to tell them and us that they're making below the city, or they're making, in the particular case of law enforcement, this is probably the toughest area to be in, because we're competing with Border Patrol, we're competing with Customs, we're competing with DEA, we're competing with so many law enforcement agencies that may offer more money. The cities, we're competing with, you know, the federal government, even the FBI or something. You know, this is a highly competitive area for law enforcement, and I think that the fact that we had to adjust pay for them more times than for anyone else just is indicative of that. So I think we're in a good place. I think we may be arguing for some details, which is what we will do. But I think that we're so close to the bottom line that we ought to just simply wait and see how the numbers turn out. And, you know, we're talking about a difference of $26,000 that I think can be made up in some situation. And I'm not sure that this is enough for us to spend another hour or two talking about the, variables here. The variables are so small right now that I think we ought to be able to quit in a good note.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Anything else? No, then we quit in a good note. We're going to try to do everything we said we're going to do, stay within the tax rates that we have right now, and hopefully have a balanced budget by the time we adopt the tentative budget. As a note, tentative budget sets the top. That means that once we adopt the tentative budget, all we can do is move items within. And there's still the variables of whatever the state wants, can do to us, because they haven't finished tinkering with their budget. They could do something good for us. I doubt it. And most likely that they will do something to mess up this, this situation that we worked on. But again, that's just not known to us now. So we need to move on to set down the numbers that we're going to be working on approving that tentative budget. Thanks again to the review team.
And when do we need to adopt that?
June the 3rd, right?
June the 3rd is the tentative budget,
Yes.
and then July 1st is the adopted budget.
Yeah, we're gonna.
So we should know by then what the legislature has done. Will we have the all-text number by then?
We should.
That's it. That's the scary. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
This is
And then you wanted to talk about the library fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have.
No, we need to talk about that.
All right, well, we'll talk about that. Okay. All right, so we're finishing with balancing this budget. Let's talk about the library fund balance. The two ideas that have come forth is this: do nothing because we don't need to do anything today, or make some adjustments now to make sure that we don't have to make adjustments next year or the years after that. And I remind everybody, this is actually a chart of the fund balance. It's not a chart of the operational accounts.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the fund balance, and what it means is we set aside a policy of keeping at least 25% of the operational budget within the library's district control. So what we're talking about right now is whether we need to make a decision to reset those rates to make sure that that line doesn't trend below the 25%. Is that correct? All right, so
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes?
Just a correction too, there was an article in the Sun today that indicated that
Blake.
the operating funds were going to negative. And that's not the case. I
They're
wanted to
not.
point
The
that out. You
operational
mentioned
funds are
that.
not. Yes, this is not an operational fund graph. The operational fund graph is different, and it always, we have a mandate to keep those operational funds, operational. So this is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is we have set ourselves in a path of trying to make decisions that have an impact over the long run. And in this particular case, we're looking at a 10-year graph, a 10-year, what's it called? Forecast, a 10-year forecast. And what we're doing right now is trying to prevent a situation where we'll make a much bigger adjustment down the future if we make a small adjustment now, because this is like the magic of compounding. If you make a decision now, you avoid making a bigger one in the future. So it's just us trying to make sure that we don't get to that point where we need to make a decision by making a decision now. What has been suggested by Supervisor McLeod is to do a transfer, basically, to keep the same tax rate, but because the flood control district doesn't seem to be able to use the money or need more money, we can sort of transfer some of that ability to collect taxes, which is the tax rate, their tax rate, and put it in the library district that needs it more at this particular time. there is a difference in revenue from, the difference in taxing system. I mean, the difference in the overall coverage of the improvement district in this particular case. So we understand that. We understand that a 1% on the flood control district is different than a 1% in the library district. But the point to us here is that we'd like to, and I think we're going to, keep the same tax rate. So if there's any impact to the residents of Yuma County, it's because their valuation went up or something that we had no control over. But what we can control is the tax rate, and that's what we're doing right now.
Taxes,
And you
yeah.
know,
Secondary tax rate, secondary.
You might mention that the reason why we got here on the library district.
You may want to mention that while I
Well,
drink
just,
some
yeah,
coffee.
for the public, this has been a purposeful spend down of the reserves. It's been something that we started on because the reserves were too high, and rather than keeping the tax rate up and pulling more money out of the public, we deliberately let this fund start sliding. And so now we're at the point where we have to do something. But this was deliberate. It wasn't an oversight, or the library district didn't do anything wrong and overspend. I wanted to point that out, that this was planned. But now we have to take action.
We were collecting too much tax in the library district.
In
and
the past,
fund,
that
And the
happened.
fund was so high that we
Yeah,
chose
that's
to
gonna
lower
be-
it so we could drop the fund balance.
And
You
part
just-
of that was
you
because
just
it was
give-
unknown what it was going to take to run the new library.
That's right.
You're just giving Supervisor Porches another opportunity to say, you should have done this, long time ago.
We did do it.
We did do it. We did it in reverse.
No point.
I don't know. I still don't understand when I read that article in the paper.
When you bring it in.
I know.
He
I
was
pride
so
myself.
good. He just kept, yeah.
Have the tax rate increased like 12 cents over from 2015
No,
to now?
no, it has not.
Because I read that on the article and I said, am I reading something that happened without me noticing?
6.25.
6.25 cents?
Actually, a little bit less because the bond rate went down.
The debt service portion went
So the
down.
combined was actually under 6 cents, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, we've been on a tear, actually, reducing tax rate. No, I'm just kidding. But in this particular case, what you suggested was to move 1 cent? Is that what?
Yeah, and I think
Tony
County
had some-
Administrator Thorpe
Tony
had
had
an
some
alternative. I'd like to see how that came out too.
Right. The county attorney clarified that the flexibility language only lets us transfer funds from a countywide special taxing district, and his interpretation is that the flood control is not countywide.
So I was right. I'm just kidding. See, when you have a taxing district, a district for a specific purpose, it seems very difficult for me to be able to move the taxes you collect for flood control, the actual money you collect from flood control, into the library district. It seems to me like that was a little bit of a stretch to me. So I've asked, that this be reviewed legally, and this is the response we're getting. It's easier to transfer the taxing authority because that decision we can make, but transferring funds, it's a little more difficult. It would be like transferring funds from the jail district to the health district, or the health district to something else. I don't think that's what you tell your residents when you collect the tax for a purpose, that you're going to collect that tax for that purpose and then turn it into, pass it on to some other fund that wasn't what the intended purpose was. So anyway, we're back to that 1 cent. Can you chart it up?
Can I have a clarification on that though?
I have asked the county attorney to just double check on that because I believe that flood control is a countywide district. So we'll have to get back to you on that before the tentative budget.
All right. So
How did it look though? Did you do the math on it?
Yeah, Tony actually has a graph that
Oh,
shows
let's
you-
see it.
Can we see what it looks like?
Yeah, let's see it. This is with what?
Mr.
Oh,
Mr.
wow.
Chairman, Board of Supervisors, we put in a flexibility transfer,
770.
770. You can see without any increase,
That keeps it up there.
it picks it up.
Yeah, it keeps it above.
All right,
And
so-
It kind of buys us a little bit of time,
Two more
Well-
years, yeah.
a few more years before you have to really get into it. The only
I
thing
don't
that
think
we
it does
also
over the long
changed
run.
was the
It's like one-time
3
money.
cents.
I mean, you move it out,
There.
you spend it, and then that's it.
Combined.
I don't know, it looks good to me.
Yeah, but that's because it has
Because
increases on the
there's
next few years.
1,000.
It's not being used.
Yeah, but look, you see, in 2021, there is an increase already. And in 2022, there is a small increase.
Each one of these was built so that it maintained the minimum.
Yeah, so
fund
there is an
balance
increase
policy.
next year,
So
the year
there are
after, so
some
forth,
increases
but I
out here.
haven't seen-
If you take out those increases, that would
See, the last thing I want is somebody challenging
have an
that.
impact.
You know, somebody challenging that flexibility transfer, and then us getting stuck with a situation where, really, why would we want to do that if we can just simply transfer the ability to collect the tax and still leave the same rate? I find, it's like one-time money versus, you know, what we're looking at is a long-range impact of any change. And that happens to be, to me, the overriding concern here, that if we don't do something now, we'll have to do something next year. And then what we do next year is going to have to be bigger than now because of obviously compounding, you know, the revenue. So to me, transferring 1% or 1 cent from the flood control district to the library district and keeping the tax rate to overall the same probably has more sense over the long run than transferring contingency money.
Yeah, but you know, that, Tony, that money's already been collected and it's just sitting
Yeah,
there.
and it's
Yeah,
just
but
sitting
remember,
there.
when you take that 1 cent, you won't collect as much next year. So that reserve becomes more and more usable as you move down the future because you're reducing the flood control tax rate. So overall, it's gonna catch up to you.
No,
Okay,
you're
so-
not gonna, if you transfer, you're not gonna decrease the flood control.
I know, but
There
you
won't be a
decrease.
decrease.
Yeah, what's the policy in the flood control regarding reserves? Do we have one?
It's
Yes.
15%.
15, we should have the same for everybody. Why do we have 25 in the library and 15% in the flood control district?
Because the flood control, if they stop on project,
Nothing happens.
Mr. Sherman, the policy, when it was written and given to you guys for adoption, we tailor to the needs of the fund.
Yeah,
The library district needs a higher fund balance because
Because
of
of
their
operational costs.
early of the year, cash flow process.
I get
So
it.
flood control, it is
Yeah,
15%.
see, that's very arbitrary. You're picking numbers out of thin air. Isn't there supposed to be a rule in accounting that says that you have to keep a 20%, 18%?
good answer, accept it.
I just wanted to write the point home. That's
Do we have
an arbitrary
Do we
number
have an
you pick.
answer on the flood control?
Yes, we have a clarification. It is a county-wide district. There's only one flood control district for the entire county.
Oh, okay.
So it is eligible for, assuming, now, right now, state law is only for fiscal year 18-19. We anticipate that the legislature is going to pass one for 19-20, but we have to wait till that happens in order to apply it to this coming
All
fiscal
right.
year.
Okay, that
I'll tell you,
kicks.
I like that, Tony, because that money's already collected from the taxpayers and it's just sitting there.
I just think that the overall purpose of making a decision now is that the impact over time. When you do one-time transfers, you're impacting the present and maybe impacting a few more years down the road, but there's inevitably a point where you're going to have to increase the library district to be able to keep that. Unless new construction, unless appraisals, evaluations go up. But eventually, if you look at that trend line, that has tax increases in it, no matter what you do this year about transferring funds. And again, we're not in any particular situation that requires we do anything, actually, but doing something right now prevents having to do something bigger
Next year and the
next
year
year or the
after.
year after.
Mr. Sherman, that is correct. The operation expenditures are going to come in the following years. So we might be in the same situation in 2020, 21, or 2022.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
All right.
not 2020.
So what I hear now, Hill and Susan, is that our attorneys, our very capable and knowledgeable attorneys, have given you an opinion that as long as the districts are countywide, in other words, they're not specific to a certain area,
They can
transfers
be
of
used.
funds can be done under the flexibility language given to us, authority given to us by the state to move funds anywhere to cover any cost, as long
Right,
as
and
they're
it-
within county.
Yes, and it's done fiscal year by fiscal year. So the current law only applies to this current fiscal year. So the legislature has to pass that law for next fiscal year in order to authorize us to do this. But if they do that, then we are authorized.
And they're on track to do that, from what I hear, from the reports that we get, But again, everything's stopped on the budget right now.
Mr. Chairman, and Susan, is the authority to be able to do that in the budget for the 2019, for the next state budget? Is it already in there, the language?
It's not a budget, it's a statute.
I know, but is it in the language somewhere? Has it passed?
Yes.
Is it,
No, it's not passed yet.
where is it in, there, that's what I want. Where is it?
It's
Where's
proposed
the language at?
in the legislature.
I know, but
But what part of the, you probably know more than we do.
I do. Okay.
So it's still not approved, but it's a
As
bill.
it's in the budget,
Okay,
correct? And the
okay.
budget hasn't been approved.
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
what I wanted
flexibility
to say.
language
All right.
is
you.
proposed.
Supervisor
That's what I was asking the question.
Time out, time out, time out. Let's
Except
reset.
for-
Supervisor
except for-
McLeod has been asking to say something for a while.
I'm
Let him say it.
It is current statute for this budget year, so as long as we transfer before June 30, we're doing it under the existing statute.
If you wanted to do something this year,
Yeah, well.
Yeah, we can do this, so we can do this no matter what they do
Before
with
June
flexibility
30th.
language.
Next year.
Right, before June 30, so we're gonna, if we adopt the tentative on June 3, we can move it then, and we're done. Doesn't matter what the legislature
Well,
does.
I just want to make the point that it's not going to really impact our budget in terms of the actual expenditures that we look at. It's going to impact the reserve account for the library. So if
Yes.
it's not approved or something, it isn't going to kill our budget. We'll put it in the tentative budget. We'll make the move this year just to make sure that we can do it and see if they don't approve next year's, budget,
But it's done.
it's done.
If that flexibility isn't in the
okay,
next year's
so
budget.
you talked about two different options, one being to change, lower the tax rate in flood control and increase the tax rate in the library. Did you want to look at it as an option, or you want to stick with the
Well,
7.7?
not if we're moving the money. What
Right,
would you
it's
want to
one or
do?
the other. I just didn't know if you wanted to look at the options that we have available for you.
Well, okay, let's look at the options you have available for us. We gotta find
Yeah,
something
never let a
we
good
gotta
shark
find
go to
something to
waste.
stretch the morning up a little.
Oh, come on.
I mean, look, guys, it's simple.
Mr. Chairman, members of the
We're talking
board,
about
as we talked about, this model is very flexible and the number of scenarios can get kind of out of hand. So what this model shows right here is a 2% increase to the library with a corresponding 2% or 2-cent reduction to flood district. I also took out the 0.003 so that we can keep the overall tax rate the same, so it's a net in and out. And by doing that, as you look out, there's lots of things that we've done over time, but this just shows a 2% increase next year with no other increases, and you can see what we were talking about. It continues to get to the fund balance down to where it's below the policy. So at some point in the next few years, the tax rates are going to have to increase at some point, especially if
Reserve in
the
there.
recession hits and our assessed values go down, is what this is projecting, 2.5%, 5.5, and then as we come out of the recession. So during the recession, the tax rates kind of typically, historically, have kind of went up to match the drop in assessed value, where in good times, the tax rate's going to stay the same or go lower. And I look back historically, and that's kind of what happened. This does get us our policy. It stays at the fund balance of 29%. Next year, it keeps it at 25%, but it's that following year where you would start running into
Now,
challenges.
Tony, the point that you're making is that at some particular point in time, we are going to need to adjust the library rate. And that's why I said, if you wanted to do it now, it has an impact over 10 years. But you have to do it every year, basically, almost.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
But less and
I
less.
mapped out like 4 models yesterday.
Yeah.
And if you increase rates slightly on the front end and do it at a lower rate, the increases in the years where you need the increases can be offset. They're not as large. So by keeping small increases during the good times, you end up cutting what you have to do in a lump sum. But the least you do on the front end, the higher the increase will be in the future.
All right, so the idea of transferring money, it's like delaying, it's like basically kicking the can down the road anyway.
It is.
Eventually, we're going to have to make a decision.
Do you want to do a 1 cent this year?
Well, if we're going to transfer, if you do 1 cent this year, you may, and move the money, you may be able to offset. That's what you can do with this graphs, right? You can.
So this is just doing the 700. Sorry, this is just moving the $770,000. So you do end up getting another year of relief, and then in the 21-22, you still need to increase.
And if you did a 1 cent also this year?
See how long it kicks the can down the road? 1 cent? It's not much.
No, you'd have to do 2 probably.
Do 2 cents and see what happens. See, I don't think that
It's a
trend,
delayed reaction.
I don't think
It's a
the
big
trend's gonna
spreadsheet.
change much until you start making sure
does
that
get
every
you to
year you increase a
25,
little bit.
Year over year over year.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit. It moves the point where you have to make a decision to keep it to 22, but it really doesn't do much. I mean, you see that $770,000 just blimps it up 1 year. It delays it for 2 years, 3 years actually. At which point we may not be in the board.
Make these three do it.
Yeah, make the new board members make the decision. Who knows, right? Who knows?
Well,
I'm all for that.
hey, all five of us
Yeah,
can.
we'll move it over
not
so
be
they can
here,
blame you
know?
guys for not doing it in time.
Then I would say it should have been done
It should have
10
been
years
10
ago.
years ago.
Prior board didn't.
All right,
take
well,
care of it.
okay, let's just sum it up.
I mean, what do you do if it's just 1 cent over the next like 4 years?
It'll kick it. It'll just, if you have 1 cent
let's
every
see what
year,
it
you'll
does.
keep it up. You'll keep it up high.
Including the 770 or without it?
Yeah, including.
I don't, okay, all right.
Boy, it's just not enough, is it?
Wait,
That helps, but not
But that
much.
moved, yeah.
did it move?
The graph.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. So just put in 1 cent for the remainder of the 10
Yeah.
years.
But it,
Just
But
keep
if you put
keep
one-
putting 1 cent, see
but
what
if you
happens.
put 1 cent all the way across, it should.
So what I'm
go-
begin-
it should-
And remember, this is
Okay.
this is a very rare opportunity. You have another tax rate to raid because, you may not have it. Eventually there's going to be some major projects. I mean, we're counting on nothing flooding
Okay.
in Yuma County for a long time. That also may not,
Works.
climate change. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, there you go.
That helps.
So why don't you start with 2 cents and then see what, what it does, right there. Put in 2 cents and see what it does. Because that's what happens on a long-term flow chart,
Just for that one.
just for that one. See? See, now you got, now you take 1 cent off the time we're not supposed to be here anyway. Let them make a decision then.
That's good over time.
Yeah.
That does work.
Yeah.
So the decision will be down 26. In 2026, the board can decide to lower the tax rate by 1 cent and keep it together there. But, that would be sometime down the
2028,
road.
2029, what are you talking about?
Yeah. 2027, isn't it?
2027, 2028, and 2029.
Yeah, that would be
you can
high.
drop it again.
And that's offsetting the flood control?
Yeah.
No,
2% or leaving the
No, the
flood control
2%
alone?
would be offsetting the flood control. We moved 2% from the 2 cents.
the
2
flood
cents,
to the
not
library.
2%. It's 2 cents.
2 cents.
Just
current-
1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you can't keep rating flood control.
No, you can't. That's what I'm saying. But if you don't do anything else other than raid their fund, really, you're not doing much with the trend. You just blimp it up 1 year because that's what you added. 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years.
And then in 2021, we'll raise it, the library 1%.
And let me emphasize that we're not talking about the
Yes.
operational fund. We're talking about
Yeah.
the fund balance. So what's the point of raising the fund balance to, by $770,000 1 year? If it's not, and at no point are we below $3 million anyway, until next year. We're not even next year, the year after next year, which is 2021.
22, 23?
Yeah.
And we go.
Well, you had in 3 years from now, 4.5% increase twice, right?
Yeah.
In the first one you showed us?
Yeah. I believe it was this near.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was taken off the cent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that looks the same.
Yeah, that includes the 770 and no increase for this year. It still may be working, so.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. So no tax increases for 2
There it
years
goes.
and then 1%.
Seeing that?
No, it's 4.5
Oh,
cents.
4.5
No,
cents.
then 4.5 cents.
Yeah, 4.5
That's a
cents.
big jump.
Yeah.
I'd rather do it a little at a time.
I just hate the color of tax increase.
Yeah, but you know what? We've been purposely spending it down. We knew this day would come where you
Yeah,
have
when you
to
had
take
to
some
do
sort
it
of
again.
action.
Yeah.
No, I don't, well, that's not. Kind of.
This one started off with a penny this year, and then only three and 3.5 and 3 cents in the out years.
See, that
And
works.
Was able to maintain that.
Oh, that works better.
That's with the 770.
Yeah.
With the 770.
And with the 1%, 1 cent increase.
1 cent increase.
I like the way that one looks.
You too.
Yeah, that looks pretty
That
good.
looks better.
Yeah.
I agree. That does look better.
All right, so what we're doing is moving $770,000 from that reserve account and increasing it by 1 cent, and then taking that 1 cent from the flood control. Is that it? So we're raising the flood control twice. One for the balance and the other one for their tax rate.
That's what this shows.
I will not vote for a budget like this. I have to say.
Oh, you too.
So is that it? Is that?
Okay, so, well, no, maybe, but what does that do to our ability to do flood control projects? How much impact is that?
There you go.
Not much.
Mr. Chairman, I need to show my spreadsheet. All the projects are already being included for 2020. And in addition to the projects that they have projected to be completed for 2020, they have the 15% fund balance and an additional $5 million for future projects.
No,
So I don't think their ability to do any of the operations will be hindered.
Okay.
Flood control.
Now let me define the difference between one and the other. One is flood control, which is specific to certain areas of the county, mostly the foothills. And some, I'm just kidding, Somerton and San Luis and some of the other outlying areas, and Bucker Park. I mean, to prove a point.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is the
below
library
Bucker
district is
Park.
something that impacts everywhere in the county. And to me, keeping that balanced and healthy over the long run seems to make a lot more sense, because if you have a flood control project that really comes out of anywhere, that we can't predict right now, then you can, do some adjustments for the flood control, because it is really flood control for a certain specific area. So it seems to me like what we're doing right now, it's taking into account the type of district we have. And remember, that flexibility may not be available to us much longer anyway.
Yeah.
So let's just make sure that whatever decision we make right now, it's not something that we need, we could do every year. I mean, we're not going to be able to take, the reserves, and move them every year. And we shouldn't do that. Really, that's not a good policy as far as I'm concerned.
No, it's a one-time deal.
So it's, it should be a one-time deal, and we should be looking at dealing with the funds within the fund structure, because that's what we told the residents of Yuma County. We're going to, there's going to be a district, and it's going to be used for this month, this purpose. It's not really good to me to collect taxes from one district and then move them to another district. That's not what we are telling the constituents that get to pay it. So yeah, it's a little iffy for me.
I think we're making very good use of money, though, that we've already collected.
Yeah, I think so.
Instead of collecting more, let's just move it over and
Mr. Chairman, this is the
Use the
flood
words
control
needed.
district as recommended. Their 2020 projects totals to $11,550,000. That's their reserve of 15%. And they have identified $5.1 million for future use. So
They're going to be okay for a while. All right, okay, I think that's what we're leaning on. There's some consensus on that, right?
Yes, there
We'll move
is.
that fund, we'll move the 770, and then we'll, move that, line a couple of years. Are we doing the 1 cent?
1 cent, I think.
The 1 cent? So we're moving $770,000 from their reserve into the library district reserve.
Reserve.
And we're moving 1% or 1 cent, excuse me, of their tax rate collection from the flood control district to the library district, keeping the tax rates in the county flat. We're not increasing anyway.
Correct.
Okay? All right.
Mr. Chairman,
That's direction.
I need to make one clarification in regards to the overall tax rate. In the recommended, what we have seen lately, the library district is actually going up because of debt service, 0.0003, 10,000 of a cent.
Come on.
Well, I just want to make sure that.
Take it from the flood control district. The .0003, take it from the flood control district.
That's how
I
I
don't
showed it
want
in this
tax
model.
rates to go up.
And I guess we
Not
can do
even
that
by a
from FUD.
minuscule 3.0003.
Accountants, that's what we do.
Technicalities, only an accountant will figure that out. Okay.
Oh,
Yes, Tony.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I'd be remiss if I didn't really thank my budget team that sit next to me. The ladies have
Make it
really
happen.
done, they just go above and beyond. They work well with all the departments, really pulled everything together and really made, so far, my first year very, very good. So I wouldn't be where we're at today without
They all
with
make
these
below,
ladies.
above 43,350, right? No? Okay, well then, you should have been fighting harder. No, thank you, ladies, and we understand that this is a teamwork. This is teamwork. It wouldn't happen without everybody being on the same page. So thank you, Susan, for putting it all together, and thank you all for making this one of the most pressurable experiences we've had this year, so far. You know, dealing with Supervisor McLeod kind of dims it a little bit, but it's okay, it's still a good experience.
I would like to thank Gil and Tony for the way that they present this information, because I think it makes it really clear. It helps you make decisions. It shows you what ifs. And I think it really enhances the ability of the board to discuss options.
Yeah. Oh, really, it's been a good experience overall. Anything else?
Yeah, I moved my position.
You did. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll see you all June the 3rd for the tentative budget approval, right? We still have a meeting this month, don't we?
Yep,
20th, yeah.
next Monday.
Next Monday? That's the day before my birthday, remember that.
I know.
Okay, so, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Judge, for being here and, thank you. This concludes the